JoJo, good afternoon, buddy. How you doing?
I'm doing well. I appreciate you guys bringing me to MCR and a Car for Kids ads right now. The 7th grade version of Mike Golic Jr. is beaming from ear to ear.
You win big there with the Cars for Kids folks back in the day?
You know what? I was just more a fan of, jingles get stuck in my head very easily. My parents always told me I was a marketer's dream. I remember all of the, I don't know if you guys remember, so I'm 35 now, when I was in elementary and middle school, all of the ads for collect call numbers used to be huge, and they all had great jingles. And so when I would get done with basketball practice or football practice in middle school, I would go to the payphone bar in my school, and I would call my parents collect to come pick me up and make them take the charge so that they could come get me. Those were simpler times.
They were indeed. Yeah, I'm a little bit older, but I remember those as well. And the jingles do have a special place in my memory as well. Now, top Cowboy storyline this week, you probably hit it on the show, was Micah Parsons' comments regarding Mike McCarthy and Zack Martin. How'd you take all that in?
Boy, let me tell you what, too. When you said the top Cowboys topic this week, I genuinely had no idea where we were going to go, considering Dak's hamstring surgery announcement. You guys, click open the phone lines every day and just have at it. But I actually think with Micah, me and Dad talked about this a lot, and we were fortunate those comments dropped, and we kind of had a day to take it in. We saw the strong reactions from guys like Damian Woody and Rex Ryan on Get Up. And when you really went and listened to the entirety of it, Micah Parsons' response to all that, I think he had the right intention and the wrong order of words. He shouldn't have made the comparison at the end that, Zack and these guys have put so much more work than Mike McCarthy ever has. I don't think that's how he meant it. I truly do think the sentiment is there, and it's a somewhat endearing one, considering how talented Micah Parsons is and what a splash he's made since he came into the league. But he's like, no, I appreciate the vets that have helped me out as I've been a young player. I've watched what these guys put their body through, and you're always going to side more and be more akin to the players that you've gone to war with there. And so I truly just think it was, hey, he was asked a question. He wasn't going to comment on somebody's job status, and he understands that this season going the direction it's going now could have such a negative effect on guys that mean a lot to him. So, again, right intention, wrong words is kind of where I put at it, so I wasn't going to come down too hard on the guy.
How much are you feeling for your guy, Zack Martin, right now?
It's tough, man. I mean, listen, Zach's a pro, and he understands that, this game and this organization and his career in Dallas are going to land him a gold jacket, have changed him and his family's life forever. But even amidst all of that, all of the money and individual accolades he's got, he's the ultimate team guy and has wanted nothing more than to help this Cowboys team get over the playoff hump that they've been in, get back to a Super Bowl where they belong, and try and restore that for this franchise. And so, I don't know how much longer Zack is going to play. I have no, actual insight on that from anything. And I know this is the last year of his deal, and so a lot of people are looking at that. But for a guy that's had such a stellar Cowboys career and, again, has so much to be proud about, I'm sure it is going to eat at him that they weren't able to get the level of team success that so many of them hoped for when he got drafted.
Hey, Mike, you mentioned about Dak's situation and all that. And when you get into a locker room where the starting quarterback does get knocked out, how does that affect the rest of the locker? Does it, you go from having that hope, or is it just completely just crush everybody in there and you're kind of just thinking about playing out the string?
Yeah, no, you can get to a point pretty quickly where it's self-preservation mode, and that means different things for different people. There are people like Micah Parsons that can be able to think about the future. Him, CeeDee Lamb, Dak Prescott, the guys that got money that are going to be there, that can think about the big level problems. For everyone else, and for a lot of the guys that are the meat or bell curve in the NFL, you're trying to figure out how to make sure that you still have a job with the Cowboys next year, regardless of who's there, or have a job with one of the 31 other teams. And so there's no doubt, though, it doesn't affect you because everyone's smart enough to know, hey, you've known Dak was the guy. They paid him this offseason. That signals it even more. And every organization really understands that when you've got one of the guys at quarterback, you got a chance. And when that guy goes down and you've already been struggling the way the Cowboys had, it's hard to ignore the writing on the wall. So everyone's paid well, all that stuff. It's an honor and a privilege to be a part of that league, but it's still going to be hard to go to work in these circumstances knowing you're really just playing out the season.
Now, Mike, another storyline we have going on is the turnover at head coach that we expect. Mike Vrabel is a name that keeps popping up. What do you think of him as a coach?
Yeah, I think Mike Vrabel's a really good coach at getting the most out of his roster. in a day and age, too, where – and Dominique Foxworth does a great job of always harping on this, and I saw him having this conversation relative to the Bears situation where so many people want them to go after our offensive coach. And he's always quick to point out, you want the best leader at head coach. You want someone that's got those traits where, a Sean McVay, for all the stuff he does play calling wise, it's what he does in front of the room. Dan Campbell and what he's meant to that organization. On and on down the list. Dan Quinn and what he's done in year one already in Washington. I think looking at this overall, you do want to go out there and try and find the best possible coach that can come in and galvanize that locker room. And Mike Vrabel always seemed to be able to do that really well. A former player that has that instant respect and credibility, seems to connect with his players very well. Obviously, the coordinator hires would matter a ton then. What you do with the offense post Mike McCarthy would matter a ton. But I wouldn't be surprised if Mike Vrabel's name surfaced in that at all. I think people are more surprised, quite honestly, that he wasn't coaching at all this year.
Yeah. You mentioned Rex Ryan. He's had a number of strong opinions about the Cowboys. I don't know if he'd be that welcome around here, but is he still a coaching candidate, or has he sort of progressed to being that blustery former coach on TV who's got hot opinions?
I mean, I at this point, I feel like once you start basically the way I looked at it is you knew Rex for a while always wanted to get back into coaching, and the heat of the take usually corresponds with an inverse correlation with the likelihood of you actually going back and getting another job. Like, I don't know if you'd be out here heating people up if you eventually wanted to work for one of them. It's a very small world in coaching, especially the higher and higher you go. And so if you go and tick off the wrong people saying something on air, because he pulls no punches and gets pretty personal with a lot of guys. I mean, quite honestly, I remember the ways that he dealt with, I'm already forgetting Buddy's name, that was the head coach of the Chargers, for Brandon Staley. The things that he said about Brandon Staley I thought were deeply inappropriate, way too personal, and biting there. And I know he's got relationships with people that he felt were slighted, but I just don't think that's the way you act if you really think you're entertaining future prospects in this league.
Hey, Mike, you speaking of the coaches, you run in that the college football world. Is there anybody of the college football coaching fraternity that you would think would be a pretty good NFL coach?
Yeah, I think the one that I'd be interested to keep an eye on, just because he's a guy that came from the NFL level. And we saw a lot this last year, more so in the coordinator spots. A guy like Jeff Hafley, who's the head coach at Boston College, goes and becomes the defensive coordinator for the Green Bay Packers, and a few others that made move. Ryan Grubb, the coordinator that was at Washington last year, now out in Seattle with the Seahawks. I think Jed Fish is an interesting guy to keep on. He's a guy that's got some of that Belichick touch to him. He did a great job at Arizona last year and now took over a situation that was pretty dire because of how well portaled Washington was after last year's national title run, and has still had that team pretty competitive. And so I think he's going to be an interesting guy. I'll be curious to see if he gets any nibbles there, because he is one of those guys, CEO type, is cut from that NFL cloth, understands how that business works. But in terms of, like, the people that grab your attention for being a dynamic offensive mind or anything like that, I don't know if there's a name right now that readily jumps to mind the way Jim Harbaugh did last year.
A lot of people locally here are trying to get Dan Lanning out of Oregon. Come put the star on.
Yeah, you know what? Dan would be an interesting one, because to me he just seems so tailor-made for the modern college game. And that's not to say that he couldn't adjust to the NFL level, but he's such a great locker room influence and culture guy. Like, he's got Kirby Smart's the best pregame speech for my money. Listen, I am not for videotaping in the locker or secretly filming someone or recording audio. But that being said, if someone could leak Kirby Smart halftime speeches about once every quarter, that would really help me get started for my day. But Dan's got some of that stuff. He's a natural motivator. He understands how to structure a program, and he's done a really good job manning the ship at Oregon. So it's a totally different animal in the NFL in a lot of ways, and I do think right now Dan's better situated for college. But if he keeps going out and putting the stuff on tape that Oregon has, I won't be surprised if NFL teams essentially look at that, and to the point we made about leadership, look at the way he leads instead of just what he does for one side of the football or the other, and find that pretty enticing.
But Dan doesn't get you emotional like talking about Kirby Smart does? Choked up there?
Man, it's just, you know what I think it is? It's like that southern accent from Kirby.
Yeah.
And you just tell, like, with Dan Lanning, he does a really good job. At Oregon in general, they've got so many people that work on tailoring a message every week. It works into the video content they put out. Kirby Smart's just in there cussing up a storm, talking about hitting people in the freaking chest. And there is just something that appeals to, like, the Neanderthal in me that's always going to love that.
Did you have any takeaways from the college football playoff last night?
You know what? I wasn't overly surprised. I mean, it's the SEC Big Ten Invitational right now. We see the College Football Playoff Committee strength of schedule matters as much or more than it ever has. Some of these conference automatic bids for the conference champions are going to definitely wrinkle a few feathers because we saw last night Georgia sitting there at 12 in the rankings, and one behind them is Boise State. And so if we play the if the season ended today card, Boise State would knock out Georgia because they're the highest ranked Group of 5 champion who gets an automatic bid. And so I don't know how well that's going to go if that were a situation that played out with the actual playoff. I don't know how well it's going to sit with Greg Sankey and Tony Petitti and the guys that were already campaigning for more automatic bids for the Big Ten and the SEC because they're the power two and it's their world and everyone else is living at it. So we're starting to see these situations crystallize a little more, and I'll be very curious how the people in power handle that when it's all said and done.
You're the man, Gojo. Have a great day, and we'll catch up with you soon.
Appreciate it, guys. Have a good one.